ready to ditch the dating playbook.
Sounds like a plan. What are we tossing it out for?
We're going to try something a little different. We're diving into Mark Manson's models. Attract women through honesty.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that one. Pretty unconventional.
He basically throws out all the usual dating advice instead of trying to project this image of confidence and success.
Which, let's be honest, can feel kind of phony sometimes.
Exactly. Manson says that's exactly the problem. He says we should be leaning into honesty and vulnerability instead.
Interesting. Seems counterintuitive, though, right?
Right. Most dating advice is all about, be more confident, be more alpha, all that stuff. But Manson says vulnerability is the real power move.
It's kind of like we're so used to everyone trying to be perfect, so when someone's just real with you, it's disarming.
Yeah, it's like they're not hiding behind a mask,
Exactly. And that's what Manson is all about, bitching the whole trying to be someone you're not thing.
So how does that actually work in practice? Like, how do you just flip a switch and become this vulnerable, authentic guy?
Well, it's not really a switch, more like a process, right?
Yeah.
But Manson argues that when you are genuinely yourself, flaws and all, it conveys this sense of confidence and self-acceptance.
So you're not afraid to show your true self, and that's what makes you attractive.
Exactly. Because think about it, haven't you ever been drawn to someone because they were just being real, even if they were a little awkward or vulnerable?
Yeah, totally. It's way more relatable than someone who seems too perfect or polished.
Right. It's like you can tell they're comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah.
And that's attractive.
Okay, so I can see how that could be intriguing. But then there's this whole other layer he talks about, the investment paradox.
Ah, yes, the paradox. It's a bit of a head-scratcher at first.
It really threw me for a loop when I first read it. Basically, he's saying that women are attracted to men they see as higher status.
Right, which makes sense on a certain level.
But then he says that trying too hard to impress someone actually lowers your perceived status.
It's like shooting yourself in the foot.
Exactly. So it's like this weird catch-22 where the more you try to win her over, the further you push her away.
It's a classic paradox.
Yeah.
Because we think we should be over the top with, trying to win someone over.
Yeah.
But it can come across as desperate.
So if you're constantly trying to prove yourself, it backfires.
It reeks of insecurity.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, hey, I don't think I'm good enough on my own, so I need your validation. And that neediness, it's a major turnoff.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So how do you escape the paradox?
Manson uses a really great analogy in the book. He compares it to a job interview.
Oh, I love a good analogy. Lay it on me.
All right, so imagine you're interviewing for your dream job, right?
Okay, dream job, got it.
You're obviously excited about it.
Of course, yeah.
But you go in there and you're cool, composed. You know you've got skills.
Right. You know your worth.
Exactly. You're prepared to walk away if it's not the right fit.
You have standards.
Yes. Now imagine the opposite. You walk in desperate for the job, overselling yourself, practically begging for their approval. Which version of you is the more attractive candidate?
The first one, for sure. The one who knows what's up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the same energy you need to bring to dating. When you're comfortable in your own skin, you're not overly invested in the outcome of every interaction.
Because you know your worth.
Exactly. And that's what projects that air of high status that's naturally attractive.
So it's not about winning her over. It's more about being authentically you and seeing if there's a connection.
Bingo. And that actually leads us to another one of Manson's key ideas, polarizing to attract.
Polarizing to attract. That sounds kind of intense. Is he saying we should be, purposely controversial just to get a reaction?
Not quite, no. It's not about being a jerk or anything. It's more about embracing what makes you you, even if not everyone's going to be into it.
Okay, so you're not trying to be everyone's cup of tea.
Exactly. If you walk into a room trying to please everybody, you become kind of bland.
Yeah.
Forgettable,
Right, you end up not being memorable to anyone.
Right. And Manson would say that's a fate worse than death. He says by being genuine, yeah, you'll repel some people, but that's actually a good thing.
How's that a good thing?
Because you're filtering. You're filtering out the people who wouldn't really vibe with you anyway.
So the people who are left, those are the ones you really connect with.
Exactly. And those connections, they're going to be much more fulfilling in the long run because they're based on something real.
So this whole idea of authenticity, it's not just for dating then, is it? It's bigger than that.
You got it. Manson calls it honest living.
Honest living. So how does that work?
It's about taking that authenticity, that honesty, and applying it to your whole life. Your job, your hobbies, your relationships, everything.
So you're not just playing a role depending on who you're with.
Nope. It's about asking yourself, am I living a life that feels true to me? Or am I just trying to live up to what I think other people expect of me?
That's a tough question. How do you know if you're being honest with yourself or just, I don't know, following the script someone else wrote?
Well, one sign is if you're constantly making choices based on what you should do or what you think will please other people.
Even if it makes you miserable.
Even then, yeah.
Mhm.
Manson talks about this guy in the book, a super talented musician, but he's stuck in a corporate job he hates. Why? Because he thinks it's what his parents want.
Oof, I can see how that would be a recipe for unhappiness.
Big time. And all that inner turmoil, it's
Yeah.
going to show no matter how hard you try to hide it.
So you can't really fake it till you make it?
Not really. Manson's point is that true confidence, it comes from pursuing what you're passionate about, building a life that reflects your values, not someone else's.
It's about finding your own path.
Exactly. And when you're doing that, when you're living authentically, that energy, it just radiates outwards.
Yeah.
And that's attractive.
It's like that saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. It's about finding that thing that lights you up and then going for it.
So we've talked about honest living and being your authentic self. But what about the more, I don't know, logistical side of dating? Like, where do you actually meet people?
Well, Manson talks about the importance of demographics.
Demographics, like age and location.
Those are part of it, yeah. But he goes deeper than that. He argues that things like lifestyle, your background, even race and culture can play a big role in compatibility.
So it's not just about finding someone who's physically attracted to you. There's got to be more to it than that.
Right. It's about finding someone who shares your values, someone who's on the same wavelength.
So, like, if you're a homebody who loves to read, you're probably not going to find your ideal partner at a wild party.
Probably not, no. You'd be better off at a bookstore or maybe book club meeting.
Right. You got to go where the people who share your interests are.
Exactly. It's about finding your tribe, the people you resonate with on a deeper level.
It makes sense. But even if you found your tribe, there's still that initial spark of attraction, right?
Of course. That's part of it too. And Manson doesn't shy away from that at all. He actually gives some really practical advice on body language and style.
Like what? What kind of advice?
Well, he talks about the importance of confident posture, good grooming, wearing clothes that fit well, basically presenting your best self.
So no more sweatpants on a first date.
Probably not the best look, no. But he also talks about fitness and nutrition. And not just in terms of being physically attractive, but how it makes you feel about yourself.
Right. It all ties back to confidence.
Exactly. When you feel good, you look good. And when you look good, you project confidence. It's all connected.
It's a whole package deal. But what about actually connecting with someone once you've got their attention? How do you build that deeper connection, that emotional intimacy? So we're talking about building a real connection, not just surface level stuff. But that can be the most intimidating part, right? Putting yourself out there emotionally.
Definitely. It takes courage to be open and honest about your feelings, especially in the early stages of dating.
So how do we do that? How do we navigate that, especially within this whole framework of honesty and vulnerability that Manson talks about?
Well, he actually provides a bit of a roadmap for building emotional intimacy. And it starts with, get this, taking the lead with your own vulnerability.
Whoa, hold on. So you're saying instead of waiting for her to open up first, I should just put it all out there?
In a way, yeah. It's about being willing to go first, to share something real, something personal, even if it feels a little risky.
Because that shows her that I'm open to connecting on a deeper level.
Exactly. It creates a space for her to do the same.
Yeah.
And it also filters out the people who aren't really interested in that kind of connection.
Okay, I see what you mean. But that's easier said than done, right? What if I open up and, I don't know, she thinks it's stupid or judges me for it?
There's always that risk, for sure. But Manson would argue that the reward is worth the risk.
And the reward being?
The reward of a genuine connection. Because when both people are willing to be vulnerable, that's when you can really start to build something real, something special.
It's like that saying, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity.
Wow, that's good. Who said that?
Brené Brown. She's amazing. But anyway, yeah, it takes courage to be vulnerable, but the payoff can be huge.
That's true. And if someone judges you for being open and honest, well, that probably tells you everything you need to know about them, right?
It's a red flag.
Exactly. Moving on to another important aspect of building attraction, conversation skills.
Okay, so let's say you're comfortable being vulnerable, you're putting yourself out there. How do you actually keep the conversation flowing?
Well, Manson gives some really cool tips on this. Like he talks about using what he calls cold reads to spark intrigue.
Cold reads. Like a psychic.
Kind of, but not really. It's more about making an educated guess about someone based on their appearance, their body language, or something they've said.
Okay, so can you give me an example? How would you use a cold read in a dating situation?
Sure, let's say you're on a date and you notice she has a really cool ring on. You could say something like, "That ring looks like it has a story behind it."
Okay, I see. So you're not necessarily trying to read her mind. You're just showing that you're paying attention, that you're interested in her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about going beyond the usual small talk and creating a more playful, engaging dynamic.
Okay. What other conversational tips does he have up his sleeve?
Another big one is relating things back to your own experiences.
Oh, so instead of just talking about the news or whatever, you're bringing it back to yourself.
Right. You're sharing your own stories, your own perspectives, which makes the conversation more meaningful and memorable.
It's like anyone can talk about the weather, but not everyone has a hilarious story about the time they got caught in a hailstorm.
Exactly. And that kind of storytelling, that's gold because it allows you to connect with someone on a deeper level.
Because you're revealing something about yourself.
Right. And that vulnerability, that's what people are drawn to.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's one last thing I want to touch on before we wrap things up. Fear of rejection.
The ever-present fear of rejection. It's something we all deal with, right? But it can be especially tough in the dating world.
Because it feels so personal.
Yeah, like your whole identity is being judged. But Manson, he has a really interesting take on this. He says that the more you try to avoid rejection, the more terrified of it you become.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Kind of. Because when you're terrified of rejection, you end up acting all weird and insecure, which actually makes you more likely to be rejected.
So how do we break free from that cycle?
Well, Manson says it starts with changing your mindset. Instead of seeing rejection as this horrible personal failure, you need to reframe it
Reframe it how?
as a good thing.
Rejection, a good thing. Come on.
Hear me out. Every time you put yourself out there and get rejected, it means you had the courage to try. And that's what matters.
It's about the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Besides, not every rejection's a bad thing. Sometimes it just means you dodged a bullet, you know?
True that. So we should be celebrating our rejections.
Not celebrating, maybe, but definitely not letting them crush our souls. It's all part of the journey.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. Honestly, Manson's approach to dating, it's pretty refreshing. It's not about playing games or trying to be someone you're not. It's about being authentic, being vulnerable, and finding the people who appreciate you for who you are.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about being real, both with yourself and with the people you're interested in.
And sometimes that means getting a little uncomfortable. But hey, that's where the growth happens, right?
100%. You gotta crack a few eggs to make an omelet.
So true. All right, everyone. That's a wrap on this deep dive into models by Mark Manson. We hope you found this conversation insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, the most attractive thing you can be is yourself. So go out there and be brave, be vulnerable, and most importantly, be real.